Hi, I'm Nina Brown, an old lowlight volunteer. I was busy putting together a small display to celebrate the centenary of women's suffrage in 2018 when I came across for the first time our own famous local suffragette, Norah Balls. The more I have researched her life story, the more amazed I have been that this woman is not more celebrated in our community. Here she is, the national poster girl for the Women's Social and Political Union, WSPU, in the official summer uniform. But more of this part of her life a little later. Norah Elizabeth Balls was born in Tynemouth in 1886, the daughter of William and Elizabeth Balls. Her father was a mariner like his father before him, spending a great deal of his time at sea during Norah's early life. Norah attended school in North Shields with the Miss Masons of Dockwray Square, run by the fearsome Rebecca and Hannah. She records walking a mile down King Street 4 times a day and remembers seeing the children without shoes. Later she went to a board school in a large house in Tynemouth run by the Miss Herberts. Norah had a sense of community responsibility early in life. Aged 12, she is praised in the local paper for raising £5 10 shillings for the lifeboats, the proceeds from a small bazaar. In the 1901 census, she is living aged 14 at 9 Park Crescent, North Shields, with her mother, brother and a servant. Father, I guess, was at sea. In 1902, her father retired as a ship captain and built a house at Deanside, at what is now 36 King Edward Road, Tynemouth. In her 20s, she is advertising in the local papers classes in elocution, voice culture, recitation and gesture from the family home at Deanside. Norah's interest in women's suffrage may have been awakened when, as a young teenager, she was taken by her mother to a Votes for Women campaign meeting. It was some years later before she joined the WSPU, the militant movement led by Emmeline Pankhurst. She was surprised at the very interesting mix of people, rich and poor, and she found it quite remarkable how they worked together with one special aim. There was a strong suffragette movement in the northeast, and she was to become one of the most active members, rising to a high position in the northern branch. She knew Emmeline and her daughter Christabel. She remembers a by-election meeting in South Shields and being terrified when asked to take the chair by Mrs. Pankhurst. No one said no to Mrs. Pankhurst, she records. This was the first of several by-elections she worked on. She spoke at a meeting of quarry workers who threw stones at the women. Was I afraid? I don't think so. I put the stones in my bag and brought them home for our rockery. There is an excellent short film of a WSPU march in Newcastle in July 1910 on the British Film Institute site. She was also a friend of Northumbrian Emily Wilder Davidson, the suffragette killed by the King's Horse at the Epsom Derby of 1913. Norah has happier memories of Emily, cycling over to Mother Davison's cottage in Long Horsley for Sunday afternoon teas. The Votes for Women newspaper reports on her involvement in the visit to Newcastle by Home Secretary Winston Churchill. In February 1909, Norah was at Central Station when he arrived and told him votes for women must be included in the King's speech. Later, she interrupted his presentation at the Assembly Rooms. Next day, Churchill sailed down the River Tyne, followed by a WSPU launch decked out in the suffragette colours with members shouting at him through a megaphone. I hope Norah was on that boat. If only there was a photograph. In 1910, she and fellow WSPU members visited London with 300 other suffragettes. They had felt betrayed by Prime Minister Asquith, who had promised to introduce a bill for partial female suffrage, but later then reneged on his promise, refusing sufficient parliamentary time. They carried a petition to be delivered to him. On the 18th of November, at the major demonstration outside Parliament, known as Black Friday because of the brutality of the police and others, Norah was arrested for the third occasion during this visit, on a charge of assault. She knocked off the helmet of a policeman. But I was very angry. The constable was rough with my friend Mrs. Brown, who was a delicate woman. I had no hesitation in battering him. She remembers spending the night on the floor of a cell with her head in a coal bucket. There is a record of her arrest and release at Bow Street on the 19th of November 1910. She was described by a magistrate as a most dangerous woman, a description of which I think she may have been quite proud. She records that Home Secretary Winston Churchill declared, "I will not send these women to prison. I'll be damned if I'll allow them to make martyrs of themselves." In 1913, the movement became more militant. WSPU members locally cut telephone wires, damaged postboxes and smashed windows. In later life, Norah admitted to taking part in an arson attack in May 1914 on Brandling House in Gosforth Park, damaging the interior. Like many suffragettes, she ended her campaign when war broke out in 1914, setting up a canteen for soldiers in Whitley Bay, I think. After the war, her focus changed to local activities. She was involved with numerous organisations. I discovered at least 12. In 1916, she worked with Lady Parsons to set up the local Girl Guide movement, becoming its first Northumberland County Secretary. In 1936, she became County Commissioner and later President. In 1920, she stood for election in the Percy ward in the council elections. At a meeting, she stated it was absolutely necessary more women should take part in municipal affairs. She felt there would be less waste and extravagance. She was unsuccessful. In 1924, again with Lady Parsons, herself an engineer, Norah was involved in the development of a new organisation, the Electrical Association for Women. Its purpose, to educate women to make the best use of electricity in their homes and lessen their burdens. In 1933, she was a member of the National Cinema Inquiry Committee, as she was concerned about the low standard of present-day films and their ill effects on the rising generation. In 1937, she is described as one of the most prominent women social workers in the North East. She still managed to travel. In 1934, she appears on ships' passenger records, travelling to New York and Morocco. She also found time for amateur theatricals and performed in local radio plays and gave recitations. On the 1939 register, drawn up at the start of World War II, she is living at 46 Front Street, Tynemouth. Her occupation is given as Organising Secretary Social Services and ARP Service. She also worked locally for the Ministry of Information. At a meeting of the Business and Professional Women's Club in 1943, she pointed out women were now doing work which we were always told that women had not the mental or physical capacity to do, women of all classes. She believed these opportunities should continue after the war. She became a Justice of the Peace in 1944. "Do you think I'm the only magistrate to have been on both sides of the dock?" she said. In November 1946, she was the only female councillor standing as an independent for the Dockwray ward in the municipal elections in the borough of Tynemouth. Standing against two men, she created one of the biggest election shocks when, as a newcomer, she defeated Councillor Anderson, an ex-mayor. Dockwray Square originally featured elegant Georgian townhouses occupied by the likes of wealthy ship owners. By the 1940s, when Norah represented the ward, the large houses had been divided into tenement flats and were basically slums. Norah comments on women shaking filthy mats and lots of drink. As a councillor, she served on the Health, Education and Children's Committees. As a local celebrity over the years, she opened many fetes and bring-them-bys, presenting many awards and prizes, as well as giving a huge number of talks on a wide range of subjects, from smiling through adversity to romances of the hedgerow. Her activities were reported very frequently in the local press. A search of these papers give details of many meetings where she championed girls' and women's rights and their roles in society. Her fight for equal pay, her work with tired mothers, her encouragement of young people to have a wide outlook and embrace the world, and the need for women to have their place in post-war reconstruction, especially in housing policy. She often pioneered a change in attitudes to the role and the needs of women. She resigned from the council in 1951, aged 65, and retired to a flat in Bamborough Castle, lent to her by Lady Armstrong. She continued her trips abroad. There was hardly a country in the world she didn't visit, and her journeys continued well into later life. Often they involved exploration, research, and networking with groups involved in similar causes to herself. When asked by a journalist in 1966 why she didn't want a quieter life, she affirmed her love of travel. Though I can't stand resorts, can't bear basking on beaches, I intend to die with my boots on. There is an interview with Norah, aged 76, as part of a Tyne Tees programme called Coast of Kings, made in 1962, when she was living in Bamborough. This film is also part of the BFI collection and gives a rare chance to see her and hear her voice. Aged 78, she was mountain climbing in Ethiopia, drawn there by an interest in the Queen of Sheba. Aged 80, she was still travelling the world, visiting India, Africa, Cambodia and Iceland. When the flat high in the castle was no longer practical, she moved to a cottage in Bamborough. Norah died on the 26th of March 1980, aged 94. Working on her story, I feel I have discovered a woman with great courage for a cause, adventurous and with a strong belief in service to her community. To quote the suffragette motto, for Norah Elizabeth Balls, it was definitely deeds, not words.